when you're working and you're doing that mom money math where you're going, okay,
Mhm.
I'm paying my babysitter this amount and I know I'm going to make this much during this hour. So am I losing money? Am I making money? Is it worth it? Do I really want to do this?
Ever feel like modern motherhood is just too much? Too much stuff, too many commitments, too much pressure to do it all? Today's guest knows exactly how that feels, and she's built her business around helping moms simplify their lives and focus on what truly matters. Jenna Michael is a mom of four, a creator, and the author of Let's Choose Less, where she shares her journey towards essentialism, minimalism, and conscious parenting. What started as a personal mission to declutter her life, both physically and mentally, has turned into a coaching where she helps mom navigate the chaos with practical, no BS advice. She's done the deep dive into parenting, minimalism, and intentional living, so you don't have to. And today, she's here to share how we can stop drowning in overwhelm and start embracing a simpler, more fulfilling motherhood. Hey boss mama! Welcome to the show, empowering mompreneurs to thrive in business and motherhood. Let's get started.
Hi, Jenna. Thank you for joining me on the Hey Boss Mama podcast. I'm so happy to have you here and to learn about all the things that you're doing because I understand that you're quite a busy mom with 4 kids that you're homeschooling and you're starting your own business. Tell us all about it. What's keeping you awake at night?
Oh, thank you so much for being here. I'm so glad to be able to have this conversation today. Yes, I am Jenna. I am a homeschool mom of 4, and I am currently building up my own parenting coaching business. So I am waiting to hear back. I wrote a book on simplifying parenting and waiting to hear back from publishers currently. And in the meantime, I've started this parenting coaching business where I want to continue the conversation that I started within the pages of my book, talking about what we can do to make motherhood a little easier because we all know it's complicated enough these days. So trying to just simplify it and take out a lot of the excess clutter when we're talking about our houses and our calendars.
So you're basically doing the, what's the name of that lady who's simplifying houses and stuff?
Oh, Marie Kondo, right?
Marie Kondoing motherhood.
Yes. And basically in a nutshell, yes, I love that. So taking away a lot of the things that we don't need, that we feel pressure to do as parents, and just going back down to the essentials. What do we actually need in order to be a good parent? Or what do we actually need to have on our baby registry? So very, very much a lot simpler than what we're told in the world today.
All right. So it sounds like you're going from mindset to actual physical things.
Yes, that's a really good way to put it. So it all started for us in our own journey with parenting. So when I was pregnant with our first, all the books, all the podcasts, I was so ready for this baby to come. And then we had this baby and I was not ready at all. I mean, no one truly is ready. And then all of a sudden you have your baby and you're just like, my world has completely changed. So as we continued to have kids, I realized that my diaper bag was getting smaller. The things that we needed in our closets were less and less. There was just less that we needed. But it's so hard in a world where you feel obligated to hold on to these things, where you feel obligated to check the boxes on the list that you're provided. And so the whole beginning of this started actually during COVID when we were locked down and I had just had our 3rd baby. I started an Instagram account with just trying to connect with other moms and say like, hey, this is weird. Like this life right now is just wild. And from there, it branched into a blog where I continued the conversation. And then I actually started a freelance writing career where I was talking about this and offering parenting advice to local parents in our area. And then I was like, these are all really good ideas. I want to keep some of these and put them in long form. And so I wrote an outline. And then a book just kind of happened after that as well. And now here we are wanting to continue the conversation in face-to-face coaching. So it's been a really cool evolution how it all happened.
Beautiful. I love how it was just really organic. You went from doing something for the fun of it, and then it turned into a business idea.
Yeah,
really cool.
It was really organic. And what I've learned along this process is that people want to have this conversation. Moms of our generation are hungry for talking about this, but there's not always a really good, safe place to be able to have that conversation because we live in the world of information And a lot of times that can be a blessing and a curse because we can have so much information at the click of a button, but also not all of it is information that we need or should be absorbing.
Yeah, I feel exactly the same. Like personally, when I was pregnant, I was very selective at the information that I wanted to consume because it didn't necessarily go with my view of what it is to become a mom and to go through the whole pregnancy process. And later on, when I did that shift into being an entrepreneur, but being a mom and an entrepreneur, I didn't see a lot that I resonated with. And that's also why I decided to start a podcast, because I was like, I don't feel like there's enough of what I want. So basically, I'm going to make it.
Yeah, but isn't that brilliant? And then you find like-minded people who also want
Yeah.
to have the conversations that you're having. So I am here for it. That's awesome.
So your business is still in the starting blocks, but you're homeschooling at the same time. How does that work? Like, how do you make the time and how aren't you burnt out? Because you seem really healthy and dynamic.
You're very sweet. Thank you. So I think part of it is having really, really strict boundaries. So there are certain days that I do not allow myself to do any work. There are days that I have built in help, whether it's a babysitter or I've scheduled time. Like right now, actually, my sister is here hanging out with my kids so that I can work. So being able to ask people to be able to help. But I think the other thing is that my primary job and focus currently is being a mom. And all of the really fun entrepreneurial stuff that I'm doing happen in the cracks in the windows in between motherhood. And in some ways, I think that that offers authenticity in what it is that I do, because my full-time job is being a parent. And then my other job is helping other parents. So it helps to be able to understand where my priorities and my boundaries lie. It's very helpful to have help, which I know not everybody has the budget or the ability to build that in. And then the other thing that I do is I work when my kids are busy, right? Like if my kids are going to have screen time for an hour, I'm going to be like, cool, me too, I'll have screen time. Or if they are going to bed early because they're really tired, I'll work in that early evening time frame when they're in bed, or I get up early and I work before they're awake. So just building in some windows throughout our days. But it's definitely not all rosy and rainbows and lollipops. It definitely is a challenge at times for sure.
Yeah, I feel the same way. Like I'm also looking for pockets of time. That's the way I like to call it, because it's really like you're going to get a little bit of time here, a little bit of time there, but you also have to make it possible for that time to be useful for your business or even just like self-care or whatever.
Oh, right.
Because there's so little of it. And it's also by choice. Like I know I'm in the same situation as you where I was able to ask for help. So I have my mom most of the time who helps me during the week. But it also means that I have to do things in a certain way to make that happen. But it was a conscious decision. The first year, like my son is actually turning 1 tomorrow. Until now, I haven't felt comfortable to leave him with strangers. The only people who have cared for him are me, my partner, and my mom, basically, and maybe also his aunts. But, you know, like it's not easy to do. And it's been on my to-do list because I need more time to really develop my business. I need to also hire external help. But I'm like, oh, I don't punch.
I know. It's
This is
so
hard.
hard. It's so hard and it's so expensive. It's so costly. And then you're sitting there when you're working and you're doing that mom money math where you're going, okay,
Mhm.
I'm paying my babysitter this amount and I know I'm going to make this much during this hour. So am I losing money? Am I making
Yeah.
money? Is it worth it? Do I really want to do this? Oh my gosh, I'm having a crisis of conscience. And then all of a sudden your whole time has been taken up by just having, this mental whirlwind. It took me a long time. If it helps you feel better, I live near a lot of families. So it took me a long time as well to hire babysitters. But one of the things that I found for me was that if I could identify people that had similar value systems to me and to my husband, then that made it easier. Once I could find them, I would latch onto them. We treat our babysitters very well. We treat them like family. They're very involved in our lives. And because of that, I feel very comfortable when I do have them around our kids because I know that they are invested in our family just like we're invested in them.
How old is your oldest kid?
She is almost 8. She's 7.5,
Okay.
and she never wants you to forget the half at this point. And my youngest is 2, and he's almost 3. So I had 4 babies in the span of 5 years.
Yeah, that's a lot of diapers.
Oh my gosh, there's so many diapers, and we're so close. We're so close to the end. And by the time that my youngest is potty trained, my oldest will have become 8, and I will have consistently had a child in diapers for 8 full years. So we're almost there. We're so close. But yeah, diapers, man, oh man, I'll be glad to say goodbye to those.
Tell us a bit more about how you're planning out your business, because from what you've told me before, you're being very cautious with the way that you're setting up things, right? So tell me how you're looking at it in terms of planning and preparation, and what's keeping you from jumping the gun and saying like, yes,
Well,
I'm an entrepreneur, I'm a business owner.
yeah, I mean, one, I would say I think imposter syndrome is a huge issue for me. I really struggle with this because I'm still good at questioning myself and the validity of myself. Who am I? I'm just Jenna. How am I supposed to be able to offer something to other parents? Like, what is it that I have that other parents would want to know? And I constantly have to be like, no, you know what? Even if it's just having a conversation with someone and being able to productively come to the same agreement of some kind, that's still beneficial. But right now, I am starting with coaching. So one-on-one conversations with moms, very similar to this, where we just talk about what's most important to you and your family, and how does that translate over to the physical items that are in your house and also your calendar. So a question that I really like to ask is, if I looked at your calendar and your bank account, or if I looked in your closet, would I be able to know what's most important to you?
Oh, wow. That's an interesting question.
Right? And
I need to think about it.
you do. And when you look at that, and the reason that all this started was because somebody who I really admire asked us that question. And I was like, nope, you wouldn't be able to tell it all. And so slowly but surely, we have made adjustments in our life in order to be able to do that. And to be able to say, if somebody looked in my closet right now, they'd know that I love to work out. And they would be able to identify that. Or if they looked in my garage, they'd be able to see like, hey, you know what? Our kids like to ride bikes, but we're not golfers and we don't have a kayak and we don't have a canoe or whatever else it is in our garage. So our home and our family is very set up to fit into our value system. And that's what I'm hoping to help accomplish as well. So one-on-one coaching. And then I've written a book. And then the other thing is, I mean, big dream, long term, like real far down the road, it would be super cool to be able to have a podcast with my husband where we could have some of these discussions and help other families be able to walk through our processes. Like we have a Sunday strategy meeting every week between the two of us. It's really fun. So being able to help other families do those things as well. So starting very small right now with coaching and the newsletter, really trying to build my confidence up and also help other families in the process.
I feel like you need to apply your process to your confidence.
Oh, that's good. Yes, you're right. I do.
You're able to help parents become more confident in their parenting, right?
Yes.
Because once you know what you're doing and that you're able to communicate that properly within the couple to the whole family, and that you feel like you're in sync between what you believe in, your values, and who you are, then it works because you're authentic with yourself in a way.
Oh, that's my word of the year. Yeah, I love it. Authenticity. That's my word of the year. I love that. Yes, I need to go back and definitely ruminate on that a little bit. Thank you.
Building a business as a mom can feel lonely, doesn't it? You're juggling family, work, and everything in between. But who do you turn to when you need advice, support, or just someone to say, "You're doing amazing, mama"? Picture this: a supportive space where you can ask questions, share your journey, and get inspired by other mompreneurs who truly understand what you're navigating. That's the Hey Boss Mama Facebook group. This free community is full of moms who are crushing their business goals while raising their little ones. Click the link in the show notes and join today. We're saving a spot just for you.
So I'm also wondering, because your kids are homeschooled, they must see you working quite a lot. Do you talk with them about what it is that you're trying to achieve?
Yes. So currently, my older two are in elementary school age. And my younger two are in preschool. And I do send my younger two to preschool primarily because it offers the older two the opportunity to be able to do things like go on fun adventures without their younger siblings, or to really deep dive into something academically. And that does provide really good one-on-one time with them. We talk about it all the time. You know, mom works with other parents to help them be more confident parents, to be able to learn things that mommy and daddy have learned. To be honest, our kids don't ask a ton about my business and what it is that we do, but they have the idea of doing their own businesses. So it's funny how kids are sponges and they just kind of automatically slip those and do them themselves. Like my daughters really wanted to have a lemonade stand, or they had a bookmark making business for a little bit, and just trying to do their own things. And I feel very excited when they come up with these ideas. So during the bookmark phase, I bought a laminator and I bookmark cardstock and tassels, and they were making bookmarks and I was laminating them, and we're taking them to bookstores and leaving them at the library or giving them as gifts. And so it was a really cool way for them to be able to have an idea and for me to be able to help them see it through.
That's really cool.
It wasn't a very lucrative business, but that's not the point, right?
Yeah.
The point was just learning.
Don't tell them about that part. The financial stuff will come a little later.
Yeah, no, not at all. Exactly.
But the part about kids being sponges, like that's something that's really on my mind right now, because I took a while of the business and I erased social media from my phone. I barely was going on Facebook, even on my computer. And to be honest, I really enjoyed it. It felt really refreshing and I didn't miss it at all. And I lost that reflex of constantly checking my phone too, which was amazing. But now that I'm back on all the platforms, because I want to share about Hey Boss Mama, about the community that I'm also trying to build with the Facebook group and all that, I'm always on my phone. And I see my son looking at me or feeling sometimes I'm maybe not as present as I should be. And at the same time, I'm like, I have to stop doing that because I'm feeling guilty. I know I'm not setting the good example and that's not what I want to do. And at the same time, I'm torn like, oh, but I just need to do that other little thing. And that brunch thing, it's crazy scary. I'm also exercising with him every morning. So that's actually good, like the good part of the sponge. I'm reading books with him and he sees me reading books a lot. We're cooking real food, all of that. But then how do I balance that? Like, do you have some parenting advice for me with how do I handle this?
Oh, that's a really hard one because I feel like in our world right now, we're so polarized with topics, right? You either are really, really into something or it's really, really bad, and you can't always find people in the middle. And one of the things that was told to me recently, because I was talking to somebody who's a fellow homeschool mom, and I was saying I felt so guilty. My kids watched TV today while I worked. And she said, she's like, if it benefits the family, then it's not a bad thing. And so it had me thinking about it in some ways because one, we can't always demonize screens. Screens are just an integrated part of our life now, even if we don't want them to be. And too much of anything is a bad thing, right? Like moderation is always the way to go. But when it comes to screens, it's important for us to be able to teach our kids a healthy balance with it and not be able to just not be on them ever or to be on them too much. So one of the things that we do is we try really hard to have screen-free time with our kids, right? If we're playing outside or if we're playing a game or if we're reading a book or whatever it is, phones can and should be put away. But there's also a time for them. For us with our kids, one of the things that I'm trying to teach them is when we watch screens, I'll give them a time frame. Mom's going to record a podcast this morning. You guys can watch some TV while I do that. And then when I'm all done, we're all going to be all done. Mom's going to put work away and we're going to go outside. And one of the things that I try to do is kind of like I batch my work. I try to have my screen time where I'm like, okay, this is my social media time, or this is my time where I'm going to text all the people back. And then I'm going to put my phone away. And more often than not, one of the things that we do immediately after watching TV is go outside and just try to reground, regulate, and get a little bit of distance between the screens. It's easier for my older kids than it is for my younger kids. I think that the more you practice it, the easier it gets. Something else that I do for myself is I actually leave my phone on a version of Do Not Disturb almost all day. It starts at like 9 a.m. and it ends at 5 p.m. And then again at 8 p.m., my nighttime Do Not Disturb comes on. So there's really only a small window where it's a free-for-all with my phone. And more often than not, it's those really, really busy times of the day, right? You're trying to get everybody fed and dressed and out the door in the morning. You really don't have time to scroll through, right?
I like how you said it's also about creating some balance. It's not all black or white. And it's true that it's not necessarily a good idea to just ignore it because we're not teaching the boundaries to our kids if we do that. And maybe him seeing that I have to be stricter with myself when it comes to the phone and deciding on what are my boundaries with it that will be beneficial.
Yeah. I did hear one time, it was really interesting because kids can't see what we're doing on our phone. Sometimes it's helpful to outsource to other devices to be able to delineate what it is that you're doing. So
Yeah.
I used to read books on my phone a lot, and I realized my kids couldn't tell what I was doing on my phone. They just saw me looking at my phone. So I only ever read on my Kindle, or a physical book, obviously, is preferred. And then a lot of my social media I do on my computer now versus on my phone if I can. And that helps too, because then they see my computer out, they most often associate that with work versus just ignoring them on my phone. So being able to kind of
Yeah.
separate out what it is that you're doing as well, and not just use your
Yeah,
phone
I
as a
like that.
one-stop
That's a good
all
idea.
device.
What you mentioned about batching your work. How do you organize that? What's your process?
Ooh, this is a tricky one, right? I schedule in the time that I am working or I'm not working, and I'll make myself a list. I'm like, hey, I've got 2 hours and I need to get these things done. These are my to-dos with work, and I'm going to crank through as much as I can. And if I don't get it done, then it needs to just transfer over. And something for me that I have to remind myself constantly, which is a really hard thing to do, is I have to remember that adult can wait and kids sometimes can't, which I know not everybody has that lifestyle and that ability. But for me,
I like also the fact that you said the emails and stuff. Wait. And it's true that too often we're like, oh, but if it's less than 5 minutes, might as well just do it now so it's done. But if you're switching
yeah,
back and forth between types of tasks, you're wasting a lot of time because it takes you a moment to get into that mindset or that goal oriented kind of phase to do social media or the emails or whatever. But if you're going from one to another constantly, like you're losing a lot of time.
yeah, toggling back and forth. I also read that that's where a lot of frustration comes from with parents who are also trying to do other things. I heard one time, it was the craziest thing to me. It said, raising kids is not hard. It's doing all the other things while also trying to
Yeah.
raise kids is what's hard. So people think that we can multitask. We think that we can do so many things at once, but we're still human. And it's hard for us to switch our mindsets back and forth. So if we're switching between work and mom back and forth, that gets really hard and we get frustrated because it's like, can you not just wait 5 seconds and then I'll get you a Band-Aid and I can finish this email? But then you think about it and you're like, this is not your fault. You don't understand that I'm the one that's having a problem switching back and forth. And that's where work can really infiltrate into parenting, and where it's so healthy when you can really set those boundaries up and say, I need to know where my priorities lie right now.
Yeah. And I feel that's also why it's important, at least for me where I am now in that journey, is having the delimitation of what is work time and what is family time. Because when I'm switching back and forth, I'm not doing justice to either one either. That's difficult when we're at home and we're trying to do it all at the same time. And it's not going to be productive. It's not going to make me happier either.
Right. It's a recipe for
Yeah.
frustration for everyone, because your kids are going to feel like you're in and out. Are you actually with them? Are you not with them? What are we doing? Hey, mom, I'm over here. And then work-wise, you're just trying to get some tasks done, but you're not going to be as productive as you would be otherwise.
Could you give us some examples of cases that you were able to help?
One of the things that I have found across the board is that most families do not have a clear purpose. So if you think of your family as a business, and I'm not advocating for treating your family in a cold or distant way, but if you look at the organization field and the structure of what a business is, and then you look at your family, it's probably pretty scrambled, right? Like we spend all this time on branding and strategy and long-term plans with businesses, and then we go home and we're just like free for all, taking it as it comes, living with the chaos. And so something that I have found repeatedly is that family do a lot better when they can structure what it is that they value, identify a mission statement. So being able to say, this is a family is something that's really important to us, and even putting it up somewhere that they can have it on display, and then structuring the way that their daily life and their planning fall into those categories. So being really, really purposeful in all of those things, whether it's having a meal plan for the week or taking time with your spouse once a week to be able to go through what are upcoming events. I'm amazed at the amount of people that do not have cohesive family calendars, right? Be like, well, I have a calendar on my phone. It's like, well, how does your husband know
Yeah.
what it is? Or how do your kids know what's happening? Like, oh, I didn't think about that. And so being able to have one central location where you can display even just the week's events. So our kids don't have access to our full calendar, but every week we write down on a dry erase calendar on our fridge what's happening that week. And I'm amazed at how often they refer to that. A majority of the work that I'm doing with families is helping them structure their family more like a business with strategy and purpose than just taking it as it comes.
That's really interesting.
Is that's important to everybody in the family. Because that's the other thing that's very interesting is that kids have a vested interest in your family as well. And this branches into a whole other topic of chores and household tasks. But more often than not, it parents operating the family and kids just kind of being on the side. But when you can incorporate your kids as a vested interest in the family structure, you'll find that they take more responsibility for things. So if you include them in your values discussion, which obviously when you have a toddler or 1-year-old, it's not as easy than when you have somebody who's older and can talk about it, but they actually have a really helpful insight. Be like, well, Mom, you know what? We really like to do this. Or did you know that we eat this food a lot? And you're like, I didn't think about that. That's really helpful. Yeah. So being able to have your kids included too is really helpful.
That reminds me, I read a book. I didn't like the book as a whole, but I thought that part was really interesting. And it said how kids, even babies, they need to feel like they're useful to the family unit because that ensures their security and survival within the group. And
what book was this?
I would have to back to the bookstore because the rest of it I wasn't a fan of. But
you weren't a fan?
Yeah,
okay.
But I thought that was really interesting because this was like evolution kind of standpoint where you're part of the tribe. And if you want to be kept alive with the tribe, you have to be a contributing member. And so the idea was we have to, as soon as possible, make the child feel like he's useful to the group. And that means valuing his opinion, asking him to participate. And that makes sense.
Yeah, I think the term is autonomy. And Maria Montessori said it best. She said that a child's play is work. The children want to be employed. And it isn't until we tell them that a chore is a chore, or we display that something is tedious or it's not fun to do, that then they take that mentality. So if you can allow them, you have to remove yourself and you have to expect that it's not going to be perfect. But if you can allow your kids to participate in those things, like cleaning up the toy or putting away the dishes, unloading the dishwasher, carrying the laundry, feeding the pet, if they can take autonomy and responsibility in your household, they build on that and they feel confidence and a sense of employment and responsibility in your household structure to the point now where there are things that I don't have to do in my house because my kids own them and they're very young. And it's a very interesting, different dynamic than you would find in a lot of households. But they own that because that's their thing. That's what they do and they help with. And it's a fascinating concept. I'd be curious to know if the book was Hunt, Gather, Parent, because I read a book similar to that. And this book, honestly, it was just fascinating. But it talked about parenting from prehistoric ages and how there are certain cultures that still parent the same way as they parented for thousands and thousands of years. And I just find this concept so interesting because what we know is what we know, right? Like Western industrialized life, but that's all relatively new in the span of humanity. You know, people have been having kids for all of time and raising them for all of time. And a lot of cultures have been doing it the same way. And so they must be doing something correctly. And so this book in particular talks about that. And it was very fascinating to me. And it brought up the subject of autonomy as well.
No, it was a different book. And it was like a really thick book, like Bible style.
Oh, okay.
About like pregnancy and in the beginning of having a newborn. I don't remember why I didn't like it, but there was something about it. I was like, oh, it's supposed to be a classic, but it's just not resonating with me. Anyways, I have a very important question. In a few years, when they're all grown up, what do you wish your kids would say about you?
Oh, gosh. I hope that they are able to say that I took the time to be able to know them all individually. because every child is different. And so my goal is to be able to know my kids well enough that I know what works and doesn't work for them. So my older two girls are sensitives, like really just molten, sweet emotion, like on the inside. Their hearts are so big and so soft. And so if you yell at them, that's really, really harmful. My son, on the other hand, you can yell at him and he's like, yeah, okay, cool. Like, thank you. So being able to know how to be able to talk to each of my kids individually, how to be able to make them feel loved in their own special way, what they need as far as their quality time together, what feels really fun to them. My third child, my daughter Maggie, she is so funny. She's like the class clown in the best way possible. Like she just has this huge funky personality, but she loves to snuggle. She's such a snuggle bug. And like, I'm not a snuggle bug. Like that's really hard for me, but I know that she feels so loved when she can just kind of like curl up and be snuggled with. And so it's really important to me that she feels that love from me. So I hope that in the future, my kids can be able to say, oh yeah, mom knew me and mom was able to like help me and meet me where I was. She didn't try to make me fit into that mold. It takes a lot of work and energy and commitment as a parent, but hopefully in the future it pays off.
I love it. I'm asking this to everyone I've been interviewing, and it's so beautiful to see how people are surprised by the question. And usually you're just like, now it's giving me goosebumps.
Oh, thank you.
Where can everyone connect with you and find out more about your book and your coaching?
I think the best place would be on Instagram. I'll have all those updates as my website goes live or as books.
Perfect. I'll link that in the show notes. Thank you so much for being a ray of sunshine and joining me here on Hey Boss Mama podcast.
Thank you for having me. It was wonderful.
Whoa, what an incredible conversation with Jenna. I love diving into her approach to simplifying motherhood, making intentional choices, and structuring family life with the same clarity we bring to our businesses. It was a reminder that just like in entrepreneurship, when we define what truly matters, we can remove the clutter, whether it's physical, mental, or emotional, and create space for what we value most. Since recording this episode, a lot has changed in my life as well. My son is now a little older, and we've hired a childminder 2 days a week. And honestly, it has been a game changer. As Jenna and I discussed, having help, whether it's for your business or just for yourself, is essential. We don't have to do it all alone. Creating space for ourselves doesn't make us any less of a mom. It actually allows us to show up better, both for our families and our work. If you found this episode helpful, I'd love to hear what resonated most with you. Come join the Hey Boss Mama Facebook community, where we're having real conversations about balancing business and motherhood. And if you haven't already, hit that follow button and leave a quick review. Until next time, Boss Mama, you've got this.